Hello, my fellow chatterers and book lovers, and anyone else who's popped in because you're curious or you've got a bit lost. Welcome, everyone. I am Chatty, and welcome to my channel, Chatty the Mad Chatter, where I'm going to be chatting away madly about the other books that I have read in the month of March. So I have already done a video where I spoke about the books I read for middle grade March. So I really enjoyed partaking in that readathon, month-long readathon where you read middle grade books. So I have a video which I will link here so you can see what I read for middle grade March alongside all of my thoughts on the Robin Hobb books that I read this month, which was the Rainwell Chronicles, Dragonhaven. So I'm now going to be talking about all the other books that I haven't spoken about yet, which are over here. And I'm also going to be talking about what I've been reading with my Mad March Hare, who is 8, and my little Dormouse, who is 5. So I'm going to have a picture book and a middle grade book to talk about from both of them. But before we crack on with the books, I'm going to do my little gimmick with my teacup. So I do not edit on this channel. We're on the second take because I fluffed up a load. So we just keep rolling and embrace the chaos unless there's a massive fluff and I decide to redo. But I'm not going to redo now. We're committed. We're off. Let's go. Clink, clink, clink. Cheers, everybody. So the first book that I'm going to talk about is Trans, a Memoir by Juliet Jakes. So I did also take part in the Trans Rights Readathon. I will leave a link in the description box with the announcement video and all of the information about that. I wasn't aware till kind of like last minute that it was happening, but I was planning on reading this book anyway, so it kind of fitted in perfectly for that. So I read that on that particular week, which was brilliant. So this book was fantastic. I really wanted to read some more memoirs because the ones I read last year I really enjoyed, and I have been reading a lot of fiction by trans authors, but I haven't. I wanted to read more memoirs. And Juliet Jakes comes sort of from where I am now living in the UK, so I was kind of keen to read sort of from like a local author. And there were so many levels of this book that I really enjoyed. One, she's so open and honest kind of like about how she felt and her experiences as she's kind of gone on this journey to be her true self. So it kind of follows her later school, sixth form / college years, goes through university, and then goes from sort of into the rest of her life basically. And it explores a lot of, alongside like her own personal journey, there is a lot of kind of like cultural influences in here as well. So what I also really enjoyed was how she also speaks about what's available in the media. So like in terms of music, theatre, film, like representation of trans people within all of that. So it was fascinating to see as she was learning who she was and how she felt, she was kind of learning more through how trans people were represented in films and in music. And it was wonderful to kind of see this sort of journey of just understanding how there is such a terrible representation. There were like sparks of that was done really well, that was really exciting how that was done, but other ones where it was really upsetting, and also where it was completely horrific and not an accurate representation of trans people, or like how people reacted to trans people. And I really appreciated seeing that through here. Like it was, I feel like I've just had like a little mini course in like trans culture in the sort of the mainstream media. So that was really, really interesting because I think we're getting a lot more, there's still not enough, but I think we're getting a lot more like positive trans stories, and we are starting to move into having a lot more trans actors playing trans characters, and this is something that she touched on, just like the portrayals and just how much it meant to kind of like the community, and how much it meant to her, and how much it kind of shaped her journey of like whether she felt comfortable sort of like being herself, or whether it made her feel like she needs to kind of like hide herself. So it was really like really interesting and powerful, and I think important to read about. It also explores like her like creative outlets. Like she was DJing, was sort of like involved in the music scene. Also like her sort of like how she kind of became an author, and like it's always been something that she's been doing, and it was kind of like bits and pieces sort of back and forth. So it was really interesting to kind of like see her journey as a writer as well. And also talking about her kind of personal journey about when she officially started living as a woman, like how she felt able to tell certain people but not other people, like families, colleagues, all of that. Like just so much to kind of like take in and explore with it all. There were moments when I felt really sad and wanted to give her a hug, and there were moments that felt a lot more joyful and like wonderful friendship moments. And it ends with an interview which was really powerful, just about how difficult it is to sometimes just be this voice for trans people, and be like, people come to you for all trans things. And when she's sometimes like, I don't just want to write about that, I have other things that I want to write about, but also by doing that you're asking me to kind of like dig up and have to explain myself and be this person all the time, whereas sometimes I just want to be me sitting back. So that was really wonderful to kind of read about and hear from. And I also enjoy how she chose an interview to kind of to end the book, because like life is ongoing. It doesn't suddenly then come out with this wonderful like bow, like we're now finished. It's continuous. It's this continuous cycle. There is definitely I know there's at least one other book out by her that I'm really keen to read. I think it's called Variations, I'm not sure, but I really enjoyed her authorial voice in this. And another thing I did was there were so many little moments where, because I live in Brighton, or the Brighton area, and she lived there for a time, so there were little things that she'd mentioned. I'd be like, oh, I know that place, which is, I always find that fun. Or like little train stations she'd mentioned, I'd be like, oh yeah, I do actually know where that is, because I passed through it. And she went to uni in Manchester, and I also had a friend who went to uni in Manchester, so hearing like Affleck's Palace mentioned, I'm like, oh, I remember that time. So it made me feel nostalgic as well, and like certain like just certain like cultural like nostalgia moments. I really enjoyed finding all those bits as well. So yeah, really enjoyed that. If you enjoy a memoir, I highly recommend this one. If you are wanting to read more about trans lives, I highly recommend this. So enjoy, people. The next book I'm not going to talk too much about. This is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. Because I have, it's part of like a little series that I'm doing called Anyone for Seconds, where I read another book by an author I did not enjoy and another book by an author I did enjoy, and kind of compare, are my feelings still the same? So if you want to have more kind of in-depth discussion, because I really go into this one, then I will link the videos here where I talk about all of my thoughts for this one. But essentially, in a nutshell, I thought the retelling was fantastic. Like the way this was it's like a Rumpelstiltskin retelling. It's got portal fantasy aspects, it's got winter fantasy aspects in here, and it's got some nice Jewish representation in here as well. The author, I think her father is Jewish. So I really enjoyed the winter setting, the atmosphere, the retelling of the Rumpelstiltskin story, and the plotting of this and how all the stories wove together. It was very fairy tale-esque, and I thought it was really well done. However, what kind of stopped me from loving it is I could not get attached to the characters. I felt very detached from the characters in the story, and I couldn't get that emotional connection from them. And that is what I love most about reading. I love having an emotional connection with characters. So that was kind of missing for me. It felt very cold. The emotions weren't there for me with the characters. I couldn't like hook in to that. So the plot was brilliant, but the characters I couldn't connect with. So there we go. I'm gonna have a little drink of tea now because my voice is going. So my next book, I have just got a placeholder here. I don't actually have this book to hand because I read this as an audiobook, which has been really fun. Like before this year, I really wasn't an audiobook person, but there are certain books I have really enjoyed listening to over audio, and it also means that I get to read more because I can listen to a book as I'm walking to work, which has been really helpful. So this was the Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams. It's a historical fiction, and this was part of Nicole from Dusty Booksniffer's book club. I can't remember if it's got a specific name. It's like a spinner wheel. She has everyone's names on a spinner wheel, and she spins it, and if it lands on your name, you have a genre, and then you pick a book from that genre. And this was Nicole's historical fiction, and she picked this one because it's one of her favourites. And I'm so pleased she did, because I don't think I would have necessarily picked this one up, and it was such a good read. If you enjoy historical fiction, if you enjoy coming of age stories, I highly recommend this, because if you enjoy those, you're naturally someone who likes books, and if you're someone who likes books, you enjoy words. And this whole story is like a love letter to language and words, and like the power of words and the fascination we have with them and their meanings. I'd say it's kind of like slow to medium paced. It is very much a coming of age story. We start off with the protagonist, Esme. Her name is Esme, but she often gets affectionately known as called Essie May. So in my head, she's Essie May. And we see her as a child. She lives with her father, and her father works for the Oxford Dictionary. So this is the first dictionary after Dr. Johnson's dictionary. So Dr. Johnson's was the first dictionary, and then people got together to update it and produce the Oxford Dictionary. And so her dad is part of that a group of people creating the dictionary. So she grew up in the Scrippy, which is this shed where they sorted words like under the table whilst her dad was at work, and they just have this love of words and things together. Her mum died, I can't remember when, so she's just been raised by her father, but then she's got sort of a relationship with sort of the people in the Scrippy. They kind of know of her, and then there's the Scrippy is in the house of, I can't remember the name, but it's the person who was like in charge of the dictionary, and he is an actual historical figure. And so there are historical characters in the book, which is really interesting. And at the end, the author does go through which were fantastical characters, which were based on real life historical figures. And so I found all of that really fascinating as well. So she kind of knows the kitchen staff, she knows cook. There's a maid called Lizzie that she gets on really well with, and they have this kind of almost like older sister, sort of like surrogate mother bond, which is really lovely. And then we see Essie May like grow up. So she grows up into adulthood throughout the book. There's a lot of different things that happen to her, but the majority of it takes place around this Scrippy. There's also like other historical events happening. We've got the sort of the rise of the suffragettes and the need for women to have the vote. We also have World War I that plays into the background at different points in here. And I thought that was balanced so well, because my concern was as soon as we hit World War I, we were going to like lose the focus of getting this dictionary published and this love of words. And we were going to be then focusing on the war. The war was going to take centre stage, but that doesn't happen. It was themed very, very realistic, and you're kind of seeing it from the people kind of left behind's point of view, that there's suddenly less and less people like working the presses, working for the dictionary because they've been called up. So you've definitely got this change in society, but it's not suddenly we're on the battlefields in France because that's the main story. Or it was very different to that. And I really enjoyed like her writing. I definitely read another book by her. I want to look at her backlist now and see what other books she has. I can't remember if this is a debut or not. I have a feeling she's got another book that's coming out that I think Nicole's really excited for. So I'll definitely be reading that one as well. The characterizations, the build up, it was all fabulous. My favourite character though is Ditta. Ditta is also based on a real life person, and she is a woman who she's a literary woman that lives with her sister. So both of these people were kind of like in this almost like literary circle, and wrote things and contributed to things. And Ditta was finding words for the dictionary and sending them to the dictionary. So there's a lot of kind of like feminism involved in here. Essie May also has, she burnt her fingers, and I can't quite remember what happened to them, but like there's, they're sort of, it's damaged them. So she has this damaged hand that she's quite self-conscious about. So there's disability representation in here as well. and it was just really fascinating. There's also like an exploration of class and of words used and the importance of words, and how do we know if a word is fit to be put in the dictionary, and who writes it down, and when do we know the meaning. It was really interesting, and just this love of words just absolutely shone through. So there's many moments in here that I felt incredibly tearful and heartachy because of certain things that happened. There's also moments in there that I felt really hopeful and joyful and just enjoyed this love of words. And the structure and the plotting of the story I thought was really well done. You were very much immersed into Essie May's life, and I just thought the way the story went and how it was crafted was just fabulous. I really enjoyed this one. So thank you, Nicole, for picking it up. And I did enjoy the audiobook. I found it very easy to kind of get into. The voices were very clear, and I thought I was really able to follow it and enjoy it. But I think it probably will be one that I will want to own a copy of myself, so that I can see it in print form, because I think there's I think I would have got things sort of like a little bit better if I could see it in print. And like, I think there's certain like moments and quotations that I would love to kind of like recheck, like look at again and relive. So that's that one. So the final book I'm going to be talking about is My Pen is the Wing of a Bird, which is a collection of short stories written by women from Afghanistan. And it's been put together by, I really like that actually. So it's not, so the person who put it together, so when you see it on like Goodreads and Storygraph and things, it's got the person who kind of like the editor as like listed as the author, but on here it says by Afghan women, and then on the side it says new fiction by Afghan women, and so it's the Afghan women that are being celebrated here as the authors, because they are the authors. One of the things that I really let me tell you more about it actually. So this is the book I got in February from Shelterbox, which is a book club where they send you out a book every 6 weeks, and then they do sort of events kind of around it. So on their Facebook page they'll have a discussion about it, they'll give you an email link to sort of like a live group discussion that you can partake in if you want to, or you can just watch live, and they usually do something with the author as well. So I was really keen to this one. Initially I really wanted to read it on National Women's Day, but I just hadn't got to it at that point. I think I could have read one of the short stories, I can't remember now. So how this book was created is absolutely fantastic. If you've read The Help or know of The Help, it feels a little bit like that, in that you've got women that if people found out they were writing, their lives could be endangered. And this was being put together like before the political situation changed in Afghanistan. And they had to try and keep in contact with these women and have, I think it was done over like Zoom meetings and things, and ask, do you still want to participate? Do you feel safe? And there was a huge amount of work that went into like protecting these women, helping these women. And I think all of the women who had been like in touch with each other and they'd been working on this together were very much like, no, we still really want to do this. And that in itself I found so powerful and amazing. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do it, but I'm going to try and put a link to a discussion with one of the people that wanted to like make this collection and then like edit it, and also one of the writers from here. So she wrote the story, bear with me, The Black Crow of Winter, and her name is Marie Bamiani. So there is a video link with Shelterbox talking to the editor and Marie Bamiani, one of the authors, about the process, about how it felt and how it all came together, which was amazing. So now the collection of stories. I do not typically enjoy short stories because I just feel like I'm just getting into it and it stops. Or I feel there's not enough for me to kind of get a grip on the character. But I was really surprised by how, with just in a snapshot, like how moved I was by some of these stories. This is a book where you absolutely need to check trigger warnings. There is a lot of hard, upsetting things within here, but there is also stories of hope, of joy, of strength, of independence. which is really beautiful to see. And I think as well, it's really interesting when you have something like this, like one, you get to taste a whole kind of range of different lives and different culture than what you would experience. But also there's going to be stories that click with you more than others. There's going to be writing styles that click with you more than others. So this was a really nice taste of that. And there's definitely like an author that I'm really excited to read more from is Batul Haidari. So there's, what was really interesting is I read it kind of like from page to like short story to short story. And then when I finished, I went back and I looked to see if any of the authors were the same. And there are some authors who have written like 2, I think one has got 3 in here, but like there are some that have 2 stories in here. And when I realized which stories belong to which people, I was like, that makes a lot of sense. So there is an author that like top and tails the book, and it is a lot more kind of, I don't quite know how to describe it. It's the writing is more kind of about it's more kind of thematic and kind of description building, and it was beautifully done, but it wasn't one that connected with me. But I could tell that those bits of writing were from the same author. I was like, that makes a lot of sense. There was another one where one story was so devastating. It was really like, it was well written and it was just really horrendous. It was just very horrific kind of domestic abuse, and just emotional abuse, and it was horrible. And then there was another story that was very kind of the poverty, such a clear description of poverty and this little family and how they were surviving, and just this one task this mother of this family did to try and help the family survive was such a huge thing. Like, it took a lot of time, it took a lot of physical energy, it took a lot of effort, and just for her to be able to do that to try and help her family, it was just incredible. But you realize that that's just going to be over really soon, and then they're back to kind of how they were before, and it was equally devastating in a different way. So it's like, that makes sense as well. I can see those too. So I just found it really fascinating afterwards. So the two of the stories that I really loved a lot in this one, and that I really connected to emotionally, and I wanted to kind of spend more time with these characters. I would love like a novel coming from these. I was very invested. My emotions were got and gripped, and I was like, that makes sense that this is written by the same person, because I have that same feeling for both of these stories. So that was, one of them was I Don't Have the Flying Wings, and that was translated from Dari by Parwana Fazay. So this is Batul Haidari's story, and it is about a trans girl having this moment in her house when everyone else is away to kind of just enjoy being herself, and it has these lovely kind of feelings of joy and kind of self-love, and then the moment when it breaks when someone else kind of enters the picture. So I really enjoyed that one. And then the next one I enjoyed by Batul Haidari. This was translated from Dari by, again, Parwana Fazay, but also Dr. Zubair Popalazi. And this was Khurshid Khanum, Rise and Shine. And this was sort of the story of a father returning from being a prisoner of war to come back and find his family. And the way it was done, like, you so slowly realize more and more about this situation. Like, to start off with, you have no idea who this person is, and then slowly, like, you get more and more information, and then you realize like the joy and what's gone through and what's happening, and this desire for him to see his daughter. And then like the way it's done and kind of left at the end, and just this, you feel you leave on this really important, hopeful moment. I'm like, I get it, that's beautiful, and we can carry on the story in our head, but I kind of also want to see it a little bit. So I really would love a novel following those characters. Like, I had such empathy for the father and his daughter, and I just wanted them to just meet. It was really beautiful. Other stories I really enjoyed in here were, I've marked them, was Aja by Fatima Kavari. And this had more of like a folktale feeling to it, and more of a way it's being told. And to start off with, it feels like it's kind of a story of knowing your place and taking stuff and just it always made me feel uncomfortable with kind of like how this character wasn't standing up for herself. But then there's like a turning point, and it's like this inner strength that she has to kind of do things her way kind of really comes through. So that was a really powerful story. Then I think probably this one really has a special place in my heart. This is called Blossom, by Zainab Akalake, and it's translated from Dari by Dr. Negan Kargar. And this is a story of two girls who felt the government was not spending enough on their education and was giving them substandard teachers, and that they wanted better from the government, and they were sort of standing up for their education. And it's their friendship and their desire to kind of go to school and how their families feel about it. And then there's other events that kind of happen, and it's a story that is very powerful. And that's all I'm going to say, because I don't want to ruin it for anyone. But that story was just incredible. So I'm going to be making a note of all of these and looking to see if they have any other works. I think quite a few of these are pen names as well. But hopefully if they're continuing to write, we might still be able to continue to get their stories. And another one I really enjoyed was Haskar's Decision by Rana Zamati, which was translated from Pashto by Shikba Habib. And this was another sort of like hopeful, inspiring story of strength. And I really enjoyed that one. So yeah, there was a lot of fabulousness in here. Some of it was really hard to read. And there were moments where when I had to be in the right mood to pick this up. But I'm really glad that I did. And there's some, I really was not expecting to love some of the stories in here as much as I did. So a book that I've been reading with my Mad March hair is The Withers of Once by Cressida Cowell. I did not plan to read this with him. I thought I was going to read this by myself, but we've been really enjoying the How to Train Your Dragon books. And he just said to me when we'd finished one of the books we were reading, he said, I want to read this one now. I was like, okay, cool, we can read that one. So yeah, I've now read The Wizards of Once, which I wasn't expecting to, and I was very good. I didn't read ahead. The only thing I did do was I had to check a storyline to make sure it wasn't going to be really sad, because he got a little bit worried about one of the characters in this book. So I had to read ahead to make sure they were going to be fine and show him that they were going to be fine, so we carry on with the story. I really enjoyed this. I love Cressida Cowell's writing. I love her characters. I love her world building. And this one is just absolutely full of her amazing drawings. I just think they're incredible. So we've got wizards, we've got warriors, we've got different creatures in this world, we've got giants, sprites, it's really interesting, and we've got witches. So this is kind of like a coming together, I think, of two different cultures that don't really trust each other or know each other in the form of their children. And we start to get a sense that the witches are stirring, and the witches are the enemy of both the warriors and the wizards, because they use very, very dark magic. There are some very kind of like grey character moments in some of the adults, like you don't know how far they will go, you don't know whether or not to trust them. Both the parents of Wish the wizard and Wish the warrior and Zar the wizard, their parents are a bit shifty. So I really enjoyed all of that. I really enjoyed all the secondary characters. I really love Cressida Cowell's voice in all of this. I'm really looking forward to reading the next one. So we're back on How to Train Your Dragon, but I think after that we're then going to read the second one, Twice Magic. So I can't wait to carry on reading this. I've had a wonderful time, and it was so nice to read it with my Mad March hair, who responded to certain moments in here thinking they were hilarious or being sort of worried. And the tricky bit is trying to find the right place to stop when you're reading, because it does, stereotypically we are reading this before bed, and it's trying to find the place where we need to come to a nice stopping point, but where we're not going to then be worried about characters being left in peril and he can actually go to sleep afterwards. So that was a challenge, but yeah, I had a great time with this one. And with my Dormouse, one of the books he's really been enjoying is Green Lizards and Red Rectangles by Steve Anthony. And Steve Anthony does all the illustrations as well. So as it says here, it is a story about war and peace. We have green lizards and we have a lot of red rectangles, and they were at war. So the green lizards and red rectangles don't like each other, they don't get on. We don't know why, but it's full of just green lizards and red rectangles. All of the illustrations are just made up of these in different ways, of the different strengths and weaknesses of them, and then eventually you get to, so you get all of these wonderful illustrations of rectangles and lizards, and the joy of kind of going through and trying to find your favourite lizard, or which rectangle and lizard you like the best. Then there's one little rectangle and one little lizard that come together to work out, why are they fighting? What are they doing? And then the book ends in much more productive way. But yeah, it's a current favourite and we've been reading it a lot. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know any of your thoughts on any of these. As you know, I do love a chat. And if you'd like to give a little like and a subscribe, that would be marvellous. And I hope you are having a wonderful day. Happy reading, everyone.